What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Clown Questions, the show where there are no dumb questions. I'm your host, Matt K. Maurer, and the question of the day is Jalen Hurts elite? I'll attempt to answer that question in addition to some others. We'll have a first-year interruption with Slick Rick, the game of the week, but more importantly, we have two guests for you today. It will be the King and Chris Surges, maybe otherwise known as the Surge. I don't know. I haven't talked to him yet. Kind of a stranger, but we're going to talk some NBA basketball. I think he's a Bucks season ticket holder who's very involved, NBA insider Chris Surges, so I'm excited for that. So who's down to clown?
That's a clown question, bro.
So is Jalen Hurts elite? Unfortunately for me, he might be. I don't know if you can see in the corner of this whiteboard. I have a ripped up ticket. I had $100 on the Chiefs to beat the Eagles. I could have won like $500 back, but instead $100 down the drain. $60 I lost on another parlay. No thanks to the King, whose advice I took, but don't worry. I think I addressed that in the podcast later. But man, I think it's tough to say that Jalen Hurts isn't elite. Now the crutch everyone's going to stand on is like, oh, he's not really that elite of a passer. The reason he's so good as a passer is because he's a good runner, but it's like, that's what people have been saying about Lamar Jackson for years. So I think that's ludicrous. I think Jalen Hurts is elite. Maybe not on Joe Flacco level. He's probably not that elite, but I mean, this is his second Super Bowl appearance. So Jalen Hurts definitely deserves his flowers. He won Super Bowl MVP in an incredibly boring game. The Eagles schloused the Chiefs, to use a made-up word there, and beat them 40-22. The most entertaining part of the game was the halftime show. All-time classic. I think maybe my second favorite halftime show of all time before, after Shakira and J-Lo. But yeah, loved all the symbolism with Kendrick Lamar. If you didn't like the halftime show, I don't know if you got it. I don't know if you understood it. Not that I could go into an in-depth explanation of it, but there was clearly some very obvious symbolism, especially with Samuel L. Jackson as Uncle Sam. I think they brought Uncle Sam out to help people understand. I keep hearing people saying I couldn't even understand what he's saying. It's like, well, he's rapping. So I understand that. I don't always understand all the words, but I enjoy the music, love the halftime, hated the Super Bowl, lost $160 on it. There was going to be some headline that I was going to make if the Chiefs had won, and I was going to talk about how Kellen Moore was hired as the Saints coach the day before the Super Bowl. He's the offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, at least he was. He is now a New Orleans Saint, their head coach, so I was gonna point to that, be like, is that why the Chiefs won? Because their offensive coordinator, his head wasn't in the game. He's thinking about his new job. Nope, didn't matter. Offense dominated, defense dominated. Only person who didn't dominate really was Saquon Barkley. Only averaged 2 yards a carry. He did well in the receiving game, but all of the Saquon betters, none of those hit, unless you took receptions or receiving yards. So maybe some of them did. But yeah, all overall boring Super Bowl, and yeah, the cherry on top is I lost some money. My brother won $486. He bet on a Cooper DeJean pick six. Like, what a call that was. His first career interception, first career pick six. Some people are calling him I don't even think I should say it, but some people are calling him the Jackie Robinson of white cornerbacks. I wouldn't call him that. That's just what some people have been calling him. But yeah, not much to say on the Super Bowl. I was prepared to talk about, Mahomes. Could he even pass Brady at this age? Nope. Tom Brady is still the GOAT, and Jalen Hurts, he's elite in my book, and I'm not happy about it because I could have won a pretty penny, but I didn't. Speaking of a pretty penny, is Ippei a fall guy? I don't know how many of y'all remember Ippei. Ippei's very famous. Ippei Mizuhara was Shohei Ohtani's former interpreter, but it was announced that he has been sentenced to 57 months in prison, and he has been ordered to pay $17 million in restitution to Ohtani. His attorney reportedly stated that he will be deported after this sentence. So is Ippei a fall guy? Maybe. I don't know. There's only really two ways to look at it. Either he's the worst friend of all time or he's the best friend of all time. I've talked about this in the past. A lot of people I saw on Instagram were commenting in reference to this story saying, greatest fall guy of all time, Um, that's what is so hard for me to wrap my head around. And I think for so many people to wrap their head around is that $17 million is no small amount, no matter how rich you are. So you would think Otani would have noticed it, but I don't know. I feel like, yeah, maybe his banking app is in English, but aren't the numbers the same? I don't know. I don't know if Japanese numbers are different. I think they're the same though. But yeah, we might never know if Ippei's a fall guy because the MLB is going to close this case shut and just keep touting around the maybe potentially greatest player of all time one day with Shohei Otani. In other baseball news, Pete Alonso signed a 2-year, $54 million deal with the Mets. Pete Alonso, I hate you. You're the reason the Brewers were eliminated from the playoffs. But yeah, you'll get to play with Mr. Juan Soto for at least 2 years here. So maybe the Mets can continue making some noise. Who will always be making noise, probably for the next decade, is the Dodgers. Clayton Kershaw has re-signed with them. Maybe doesn't have his fastball, to use a very literal metaphor, there anymore. But he's a veteran presence. You're glad to have a Cy Young winner there. With Shohei, who's coming back from injury, who will be pitching this year. But yeah, Dodgers, bet them to win the championship. I would guarantee a Dodgers championship this year. Last thing is in the other city in LA, the Angels are signing Kenley Jansen. Shout out Kenley, decent closer. I've had him on a few of my fantasy baseball teams. But enough baseball. Let's talk some basketball with this question. Which trade is the most impactful? Last week I talked about the Luka Doncic trade, so I'm going to skip through that. The Luka AD trade is obviously the most impactful. You could argue is the domino that set off all these other trades. But in terms of second most impactful trade, I'm going to call it the DeAndre Hunter trade. The Hawks traded DeAndre Hunter to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Karis LeVert, Georges Niang, I think it's just George, sorry, 3 second-round picks and 2 pick swaps. I think this trade is huge. I think the Hawks are kind of forming a big three. Actually, let's give Evan Mobley a little respect, a big four. I'm a casual NBA fan, and I know how good Donovan Mitchell and Garland and Mobley. I don't know a ton about Hunter, but apparently Hunter's been putting up great stats. He's probably been one of the Robins to Trae Young's Batman down in Atlanta, but the Cavs had a very complete team. I think still first place in the East. Every time they go on a scoring binge, they're calling it a Cavalanche. So I think this is very impactful. I think it continues to bolster the Cavaliers' current status as legitimate contenders, but no one has been given them that title yet. But I think Hunter makes that team even more complete, especially offensively. Third most impactful trade, in my book, might not impact the playoff picture this year, but for years to come, I think it could. The New Orleans Pelicans traded Brandon Ingram to the Toronto Raptors for Bruce Brown Jr., Kelly Olynyk, a first-rounder, and a second-rounder. Ingram then went on to sign a 3-year, $120 million deal with the Raptors, so I don't think the Raptors are going to do anything in the playoffs this year. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, but they form a formidable duo with Ingram and Scotty Barnes for years to come. I guess the Raptors also made another trade. They traded Davion Mitchell to the Miami Heat for P.J. Tucker. P.J. Tucker, good, role player, good piece to have on your team, but I don't know. I kind of expected P.J. to go to more of a team that's in win now mode, but good to have a veteran presence there with the young guns. Fourth most. Oh my goodness. See, I'm keeping my phone on because I want to see if any sports news comes up. Wide receiver Kadarius Toney was arrested in Georgia last week. He allegedly strangled a woman. Holy shit. Lock him up. I should do more breaking news reactions. That's crazy. Fourth most impactful trade here, to get back to that, is probably the one that had maybe the second or third most buzz, maybe second most uh, buzz. Jimmy Buckets to the Warriors. He is a Golden State Warrior. The Warriors acquired him in exchange for Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schroeder, Kyle Anderson, and a protected first-round pick. Wiggins and PJ Tucker head over to the Heat, but I guess it was actually, a three-team trade. Dennis Schroeder went to the Utah Jazz. Kyle Anderson went to Toronto. The Pistons are getting Lindy Waters, Josh Richardson, and a second. A lot of moving pieces there, but obviously the headline is Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry are now a duo, a big two. Some people are calling a big three with Draymond, but I think Draymond's much more past his prime than those other two guys. But yeah, I think it's weird that I'm listing the Jimmy Butler trade as the fourth most impactful, because you would think it's, right up there with the Luka trade, but I don't think it. I don't think it is. I don't see it. I think the Warriors could win a series or two in the playoffs, but I don't think they're a real championship threat. But who knows? Maybe I'll eat my words. Maybe Steph will pass my glorious king LeBron in rings this year, but I hope not. And I don't think it will happen. Butler did agree to a 2-year, $121 million extension with the Warriors, $60 million a year. Sheesh. But I think Jimmy Butler kind of got what he wanted here, and the Heat finally forced him out. Let's hope the Warriors don't suspend him for the fourth time this year. Fifth most impactful trade here, I got this one's impactful to me in terms of tanking. So the Memphis Grizzlies are trading Marcus Smart and a 2025 first-round pick to the Wizards in a multi-team trade that sends 2 first-rounders to Memphis. They created roster flexibility with this move. The Wizards ended up sending Marvin Bagley III and Johnny Davis to the Grizzlies for Smart. So I'm not saying Marcus Smart is a bad player, but on a team as bad as the Wizards, you need lockdown. Smart is a lockdown defender. You need incredible scorers. Bagley and Davis are pretty decent scorers. So I think this is kind of a tanking move for the Wizards, and that's impactful in my mind, because it means they're that much closer to drafting a potential Cooper Flag at the 1-1, or I've heard those Rutgers boys, Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, are going to be right up there in the lottery as well. So that one's impactful to me, because I think Wizards are really gunning for that number 1 pick. Let's get into the rest of the trades. Mostly trade talk for my portion of this podcast, because there were so many. So my next question is, which trade was the least impactful? All of these are impactful, but I had 10. I had to break it up into 2 questions. So the number 1 least impactful trade to me was the Dalton Connect Mark Williams trade. And it's the least impactful because it doesn't exist. It got rescinded. The Hornets are challenging that rescission right now, so they're trying to unrescind the trade. I don't, it's confusing. I know, but initially what happened is the Lakers traded Dalton Connect, Cam Reddish, and a first-round pick, in addition to a pick swap, to the Hornets in exchange for their starting center, Mark Williams. I was overjoyed to hear this, because I knew that missing piece for the Lakers was a center. All respect to Jackson Hayes. I've been seeing him catch a lot of lobs. He's really athletic, really talented, but we're really worried about the rebounding and the defense and those statistics and things of that nature. But apparently it's being rescinded. So awkward couple of days for Mark Williams, Dalton Connect, and Cam Reddish. But apparently it got rescinded because the Hornets failed to satisfy a condition of the trade. But I don't like how they're wording that, because what happened was Mark Williams failed his physical. The Lakers doctors are the ones who failed Williams on this physical, but it's weird because they didn't fail Mark Williams due to his current back injury. So the Hornets are challenging this. They're trying to push the trade through if they can. We'll see what happens, but it's weird that you're failing him for an issue unrelated to his back. So the Hornets are going to challenge it, because if it's anything you could get failed on, why wouldn't it be his current injury? But I think the Lakers team doctors are probably more worried about the long-term wear and tear on his body, and don't think they're not worried as much about this year as future years. So they failed him on the physical, and the trade gets sent back. Hornets keep trying to get Dalton Connect. I love Dalton Connect, but I really would like another center. The Lakers did end up getting another center, Alex Len. They signed Alex Len. Unfortunately, they had to waive Christian Wood in order to make room for Alex Len, which I'm not happy about because Christian Wood is quite a talent when healthy. But Christian Wood hasn't played a game of basketball in over a year, so the Lakers are just, I guess, kind of gave up there. But back to which trades were the least impactful. The number 2 least impactful trade to me was the Detroit Pistons acquiring Dennis Schroeder from the Utah Jazz. This trade was so crazy to me because this trade made it to where Dennis Schroeder had been on 4 different teams in a matter of 24 hours. He started on the Warriors, went to the Heat, went to the Jazz, went to the Pistons, ended up there. Some people are saying he kept getting traded because he made a comment where he compared the NBA to slavery. And people are like, well, you're getting paid $12 million a year. How can you argue that's slavery? You're getting paid a lot of money. But I feel like the fact that he got traded 4 times, the teams are kind of proving his point. It's like he doesn't have any control on where he's going. He's got to find a new apartment every week, it seems like, or every 8 hours, every 6 hours in this case. But I think Schroeder's a good ad for the Pistons. Pistons, they could be an interesting team. They could be a threat to upset a more notable Eastern Conference team in the playoffs this year, I think. Number 3 least impactful trade, Indiana Pacers traded James Wiseman and cash to the Toronto Raptors. He was the number 2 overall pick in 2020, but evidently hasn't lived up to the height. The fact that they're sending cash to the Toronto Raptors, that's always crazy to me because it's like we're literally paying you for this player to not play for us, so we're paying him to keep him out of there. But moving on, 4th least impactful trade is the Phoenix Suns trading Yusuf Nurkic and a 2026 first-rounder to the Hornets for Cody Martin, Vasily Mitchik, and a 2026 second-rounder. Not really going to get into that one. I won't talk too much about this 5th least impactful trade. Clippers trading Terrence Mann and Bones Highland to the Hawks for Bogdanovich, and 3 seconds. What was interesting to me with the Clippers was a move they made in free agency. They signed Ben Simmons out of free agency. Ben has had quite a run, one of the best bag stealers in pro sports. It'll be interesting to see what he can do with the Clippers there. And the number 6 least impactful trade, which if I'm doing this correctly, I am semantically saying that it's the least impactful. So this is one of the more impactful trades. So maybe I should have included it with the most impactful. But the Clippers traded Kevin Porter Jr. to the Milwaukee Bucks in exchange for Marjan Beauchamp. I don't know if I said that name right. It's French, but I've heard good things about KPJ. Haven't watched him much, but I think he's a athletic slasher. Someone the Bucks fans I think are pretty excited about. That's all I got for questions. Let's get to our segments. First, your interruption with Slick Rick. This is a fun one. So it was Josh Allen winning the MVP last Thursday. In his MVP speech, he shouted out one of the mailroom employees, evidently named Slick Rick. So I got a little clip of Josh shouting him out, and then Slick Rick's kind of reaction to being shouted out. It's a very wholesome moment. And yeah, I just wanted to include that. Shout out Jana for alerting me to this video. So here's First Interruption with Slick Rick.
We got such a great locker room in Buffalo, and it takes everybody from the equipment staff to the training room to the strength staff to Slick Rick in the mailroom to the cafeteria upstairs. Like it truly takes everybody to have team success, and I'm so fortunate to be a part of a great organization.
Did you know you were going to get a shout out? And
no.
So you're just sitting there watching, or how?
Just watching, because like I said, when I left work Thursday, I said, if Josh doesn't get MVP, I'm going to cry. I said, I'm going to cry because he deserves it. I mean, he's that important to our team. So basically, when I was watching the awards, when he went on stage, everything, I was happy that he had won it. and it went from joyful to crying because when he mentioned my name, I just broke down. I broke down because I'm just an average person. I mean, but when he mentioned my name, it was like, oh my God, he just mentioned my name on national television, you know. So it was like, I was just crying. I was crying. Then I started getting phone calls from friends, and I was crying on the phone to them. It's still like a dream. Even though I work here, but I don't like this publicity. I'm just down to earth.
Super, super wholesome, heartwarming moment from Slick Rick there. Clearly a lifelong Bills fan who's overjoyed that Josh Allen won the MVP. Totally deserving for Josh Allen. I don't know if he had the best season out of everybody, but I think the term most valuable player, you could argue that without Josh Allen, his team falls off the biggest cliff. He's the most valuable in terms of, team success. Personally, I think I would have given the MVP award to Saquon Barkley, but as we saw in the Chiefs, that entire roster is stacked, especially O-line and D-line. But yeah, Lamar Jackson is maybe a little mad he missed out on his MV3 award. One hilarious thing that I definitely have not said. I've seen other people say this. I am not saying this. I've heard people calling Josh Allen a DEI MVP, which is just the most ridiculous thing I think I've heard. Yeah, they're like they needed another white guy in there. They needed to include, Lamar Jackson and Mahomes are winning too many. Just ludicrous. That's not at all true. Josh Allen was totally deserving of the award. And yeah, that's all I have to say on that. Shout out Slick Rick in the mailroom. But let's get to our interview. This one, I don't know what to expect from it because I have never met Mr. Chris Surges, aka The Surge or aka Surge. I don't know if those are even correct nicknames or how I'm gonna, tee up his name on the title because I haven't met him yet. So I'm excited to meet one of the King's good friends who evidently is an NBA insider. So here's our interview. Take it away, the King and the Surge. All right, now pulling up to the pod, we have a reoccurring guest, the King, and we have someone I haven't met yet. It's a NBA insider, Chris Surges. Chris, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on. What do I call you, Chris? Do I call you Surge? The Surge?
Yeah.
What should I
Just
address
Surge
you
is
as?
good. Yeah. Thanks for
Just
thanks for
Surge,
having me.
sure. Yeah, thanks for coming on. Danny, how you doing? I see you got the new jersey out, the Eddie Lacy. Is that?
It's 27 years. My people gave it to me at a retirement party right across the street from Lambeau Field. It was a wonderful event and a
We
great
love
gift.
We love it.
If it's Eddie Lacy's actual jersey, it may fit.
It was a
There you
little
go.
small, believe it or not.
There you go.
Thank you for having me on, Matt, as always. I got to tell you, today I am honored because I get to introduce this guy. Now, he's a long, dear friend of mine. I've known him for over 40 years. And when you told me that you wanted to talk NBA, I said, we have to have this man on. I will tell you, the night, nobody knows the Milwaukee Bucks better and the NBA better than this insider. But the night that the Bucks won the championship, of all the people, and I knew a number of people who were at that game, many family members, Julie and Angela, Uncle Paul, Luke, many of them were there. I thought of this man because he had been with them for, I would bet, the 40 years I knew him, and had been a longtime season ticket holder. We'll let him talk about that. But I
that was
so good for him. I really did. And that was heartfelt, Serge. And I knew you were there, and I really felt good for you because you were there through the thick and really thin times with the franchise.
Yeah,
that was
it made me cry just like I did that night.
So
Serge,
anyway, without further ado, I want to ask you, Chris, if you could start, because I think Matt and his listeners will get a great feel for.
Yeah, that was going to be my first question, Serge.
Story
yeah, what's your origin story? How did you become an NBA insider?
Yeah, well, it's a lot of hard work. A lot of people I'd like to thank, but I'll go back and talk a little bit. Yeah, I mean, since probably I don't want to give away my age, but since early mid '70s, as a young guy, I was always a Bucks fan. I can remember, in the '80s when the Bucks had, some pretty good teams that ran into Philly and Boston in the playoffs. But I can remember whenever they'd announce, playoff tickets on sale, 8 a.m., at the box office, because that's where you had to go down and get the tickets back then. At the Mecca, my brother would take me down there. We'd get there, 7 a.m., stand in line, and wait a couple hours to get those, upper deck corner tickets to those playoff games, and just loved them, back then. Fast forward to the 2001 NBA Eastern Conference Finals, which is still hard to talk about because the Bucks got robbed, of course, against Philly in the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm not going to go through all that, but it was after that season that I signed on for Bucks season tickets. So it's been about 23, 24 years season ticket holder for the Bucks. As Dan mentioned, a lot of rough times, being a Bucks fan through that period. I can remember I actually owned a nightclub downtown, early 2010s, and a lot of Bucks would actually come there. But to show like how rough it was, being a season ticket holder, I had often gave away my tickets, and so I'll put something out on social media or whatever. Hey, I got a couple of tickets at the bar, free. Come down, pick them up for tonight's game. I'd stop down at the bar later and, ask the bartender, hey, anyone come get the tickets? And, she'd always reply, well, no. And as a matter of fact, there's 4 more sets of tickets here to pick up that people left. So, yeah, it wasn't really a popular ticket.
There was a fight at that nightclub, Chris, when
What's that?
With the Bucks, wasn't there?
What's that?
Didn't you have a fight with a couple of the Bucks down there?
No. There was never a fight. I had a lot of regulars back then. John Henson and Brandon Jennings. Those I'm still in touch with those guys actually from back then. Dan Gadzarich. But
you're friends
no,
with the
any,
inventor
any
of Bucks
fights
and
with them.
Six?
They were pretty good. I mean, when they first came to the club, it was kind of funny because we have a lineup side, and our bouncers or guards that we had that were letting people in, not real familiar with the Bucks. I looked out at the line and I saw 2 6'10" guys, amongst all of the other, people coming into the club. I'm like, hey, what do you got these guys in line for? Like, let them in. It was Henson and Marquise Daniels at that time, but yeah, that was got to know them pretty well. But things obviously changed 2013, and that was the year that we drafted Giannis, and also made a trade about a month later where we traded Brandon Jennings for Brandon Knight and a throw-in named Chris Middleton in the trade. And one of the things, at least back then, being a season ticket holder, is they'd allow you some perks, and one of them was, before the start of that season, which would have been Giannis and Middleton's first season, they had us, just a few select season ticket holders, come down to the practice facility preseason and just watch a practice. But the cool thing there was there was a rather intimate, again, there was only probably about 10 season ticket holders, 12 season ticket holders, and they had John Hammond, who was then the GM of the Bucks, who of course drafted Giannis and then made that trade, come up and do a Q&A. And one of the things that I had asked right out of the gate was, hey, you drafted Giannis, not everyone knows about him, and kind of historically the Bucks didn't really bring in rookies or get them a lot of playing time, and he said, well, this guy's going to get playing time right away. And as far as the draft pick, he went back and said, I knew immediately we were making the right pick when Atlanta, who was had the next 2 picks in that draft, was calling him to offer those 2 picks to move up to draft Giannis. And so he's like, I knew right away that, there weren't many people that were looking at Giannis, but, obviously Atlanta, Danny Ferry was their GM then. They were interested in him. And, so that was one thing. The other thing, they talked about the trade a little bit and Brandon Knight, but Hammond then brought up, and Hammond had been the GM at Detroit prior to this. So he actually was familiar with Middleton, drafted him in the 2nd round at Detroit, and wanted to get Middleton in that trade. And so he brought him up specifically and said, this is a guy that's going to make a big impact, with the Bucks in the future. He's not a throw-in. He's a guy, and it was just, I always look back to that memory. Always, again, a big Middleton fan, obviously, but as really the turning point for the Bucks. Obviously, 7, 8 years later, championship, and it's been 12 years now since then. Yeah. And now the Bucks and their ownership are just trying to hang on to things before too long, or before the chance that maybe Giannis moves on. So that's kind of the background of me and the Bucks. Along with that, again, huge NBA fan, huge sports fan, really. But I could handle a lot of old trivia back in the day for NBA as well. So, but that's the background.
Yeah, for sure. We love it. That's a great origin story. Now I want to get into the Milwaukee Bucks and the NBA in a little bit, but I wanted to get something out of the way first. Serge, should I ever take gambling advice ever again from the King after I went 0 for 3 on his Super Bowl parlay? Not a single leg hit. Should I ever take gambling advice from this guy ever again? What do you think?
Yeah, the King throughout the years has a lot of confidence. Very confident man, as I'm sure you know. Throws around the word lock quite a bit. And
etch it in stone, he says.
Etch it in stone, my man.
Yeah. He doesn't have a lot of things backing any of that up. Usually stats or trends or anything. Let's just say it's a gut feel. And so that probably is why he has that confidence. But anyways, he again, there's horse racing. I know he has an affiliation with, and maybe we can listen to him there. But I don't know. I mean, there's probably there might be better sources. That's all I'm saying.
Now, in my defense, on our last podcast, Chris, mid-season, this was before Philadelphia went on that run. I predicted Philadelphia KC. And I specifically said, when everybody's flavor of the month was Buffalo and Baltimore, I said, KC's going to have a home game and they're going to be in the AFC Championship. How can you pick against this team? And that came to fruition, and that helped them immensely. This was not a solid KC team. But Philly, I said, had the most talent. That came to fruition. That team is stacked, and they are stacked for next year. However, I was 0-3, all under in the game. I thought both defenses played well, and the over on Goddard's catches and Brown's receiving yards.
0 for 3. I could have taken the exact opposite on every pick, and I would have hit.
That's true. And Matt did want to go over on the game, and I talked him out of it to go under, and I still would have held that.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Vegas, so obviously I had a lot of different props going on, but the big one was the 2-team teaser where I teased Philly up to 7.5.
Oh, nice.
And then over 42.5. That's the one, and it was locked in pretty early. So
okay, good job.
A lot more fun in the fourth quarter. But
there you go, a successful trip to Vegas. That's good. Well, I want to talk more Super Bowl at the end of the podcast, but we got a lot of NBA to talk. There was, I don't even know how many trades, 20 plus trades it feels like. But we'll start with the Milwaukee Bucks. That's where you're an insider, season ticket holder. You go to these Q&A stuff. So What is the current state of the Milwaukee Bucks? And I was maybe going to ask for like a grade on the Middleton Kuzma trade. I'm interested to hear what you think about that one.
Yeah. Well, as far as the trade goes, again, taking the emotion of Middleton leaving and everything, it's a trade that they had to make as far as some financial flexibility. Middleton going out at around 32, 33 million. Kuzma coming in at around 22. Middleton had a player option for next year, which I mean, I'm certain he would have taken the 33 million for another year.
Right.
And so, I'm not getting into all the specifics, but there's different aprons in the, salary cap of the NBA that puts teams into different luxury tax situation and also puts in some restrictions as to what they can do as far as trades go. So they didn't really have a lot of flexibility to, necessarily do anything big. What this trade allows them to do is, bring in a guy, definitely he's younger. He is not that great of a shooter. I know that, people may look back to, well, you may look back to when the Lakers, won their championship and, he was kind of the third guy there and, played really well, got himself a nice contract after that. And, he's a streaky shooter, but low 30%, and actually is a terrible free throw shooter, which I wasn't aware of. But what he brings them is some size, and obviously, some youth. I mean, he is a guy that is about 6'9". I was talking to King a little bit before the podcast. I mean, he's a guy that can go out and get 8, 9 rebounds, and it's something that they definitely needed. And as far as the financial flexibility, it again allows them in the off season for sure. They have a lot of free agents, Portis and Lopez and Prince and Trent and on and on. So they're going to have to make some decisions, as far as that goes. This gives them a little bit more flexibility to maybe sign some of those players or make a move in the summer. One thing about that trade I do want to mention, because it may, hopefully it doesn't, but it may tie back to the earlier Middleton story I had with where he was a throw-in, is the throw-in here was AJ Johnson, our first round pick that the Bucks had, who has been playing really, really well. He's been a guy to watch in the G League. And I think he has a great upside. And so I was telling people, prior to, kind of all the information coming out about the trade was, that, too bad they couldn't have included some other young guy in the trade other than him. And
Yeah.
I was actually confirmed. I read something this morning that, Washington was ecstatic about getting AJ Johnson in the deal. And, in fact, they had him graded as a lottery pick in last year's draft. And I know that everybody was shocked when the Bucks took him when they did, because, he had been playing in Europe, coming off the bench, averaging 2 points a game.
Right.
He's
Looks
19.
undersized. Yeah.
He's 19 and, a good player. So, as far as that goes with, again, with that trade, Kuzma can help them, as far as, putting them over the top. I think they're kind of in a similar situation that they were as far as this year. It really comes down to their 5 seed now. It really comes down to health. We haven't had that in the last few years. Giannis and Lillard obviously have to be healthy, and they have to dominate. We have some great 3-point shooters, and when we get to the state of the NBA, I'll talk more about how important it is. But it really comes down to health. I think that this team could beat anybody. I think if they get lucky, like some teams in the past couple of years have gotten lucky on us, where we've, again, the last several years, we haven't had Giannis. Before that, the year after the Bucks won the championship, they really should have won 2 in a row. Because the year after that, I think their team was even better than the championship team. But we lost Middleton going into the Eastern Conference Finals against Boston.
Right.
Still took them to 7. And I think that they go in and probably win the title that year. So I think health is a big deal. They still have an opportunity. They have an open roster spot to maybe get a buyout player. The trade allows them now to sign a guy that gets bought out, a veteran, for around $3 million. There's a few guys out there. I can go through all of them if you want, but
Yeah. So what's
a
your
little bit more detail than you need.
what letter grade do you give to that Kuzma trade? B minus, B plus? What do you think?
Well, again, taking emotion out of it, I would give it probably a B.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk. I think you kind of covered a little bit of it, but what's the state of the Bucks? Are they? I shouldn't say we. I'm a Lakers fan, but do you see them as contenders this year, or do you think this might not be the year they got to add someone in the offseason to be legitimate contenders?
No, like I was saying, I think that they can beat anybody. Giannis has shown that if he makes his mind up that he's going to dominate a game, he can. Obviously, through the NBA Cup, they went through that unbeaten. And we're playing hard. We're healthy throughout that. They beat Oklahoma City team, who's considered right now, the best team in the NBA. They beat them in the final, and it was one of those games where before the game, Giannis said, "There's no way we're losing this. We're going to win this." It's a similar thing he said, by the way, before Game 6 of the NBA Finals against the Suns that he put up, a 50-point game, 55-point game. So, if they are healthy and completely healthy throughout the playoffs, I think that they could get through the East. It may take some a touch of luck because they're going to be on the road probably with their seeding, especially against a team like Cleveland. But we've played Cleveland tough this year, a couple 1-point games against them, But I see Cleveland as the best team in the East, followed by the Knicks actually. Again, you never know. I mean, they could be in a series against Cleveland, and maybe Donovan Mitchell got hurt or Mobley got hurt, and is not available, and so now it's kind of the reverse where I guess roster talent wise, it kind of evens things out.
I gotcha.
I have to jump in here 1 second, guys. I don't see that, Chris, and the only thing I'd fire back on that is they'd have to go through 2 of these teams, either the Knicks, Cleveland, or Boston. And I don't see them. These are 7-game series. I just can't see that their squad can play these teams and win. They might win a game here and there, but I can't see them winning a series against, well, in my opinion, one of those 3 teams. 2 of them, just about no chance. My question would be, it's obvious from your answer, I guess you answered it. I was going to lead in by saying, is it time to break up more? But I think
King, I want to bring up something you said
but go ahead.
I want to bring up something you said on a previous podcast, and I'm sure the Surge is going to be appalled when he hears this. But do you still think the Bucks should trade Giannis? Because on a previous podcast, you suggested that's what the Bucks should do. They should trade Giannis. So do you still think that's a good idea?
I would have traded him for Luka Doncic. I will tell you this. The way the core is, and Luke Mauer, who Serge, worked for the Bucks, my nephew, he said he would never watch them again if that happened. And I was kind of blown away because, in my opinion, watching them play, and that was early in the season, they were getting dusted by everybody, but the defense was just woeful. And I just couldn't see that team competing for anything. I mean, things step up. It's a different brand of basketball when the playoffs start. And it was apparent to me last year that these younger teams coming up were going to, Indiana had their way. Now they were injured, the Bucks, I understand. But, you've got younger legs and you've got, fresher talent. And for me, it was time to move the assets. Now, I don't think you can say that same thing now that Middleton's gone, but I'm still not sure that Giannis is out of play, but I'll let Chris speak to all that.
Yeah, I mean, Giannis is the best player in the NBA, and I know that like people are gonna argue that.
I would say Jokic. I would say
I mean,
Jokic
yeah,
personally.
and I
Put
said
him in
this
the top
probably,
3.
I've
I
said
put him in
this
the top-
probably the last 3 years. The only player I would ever think about trading Giannis for would be Jokic.
Yeah.
That's it. And there's nobody else even
What about
close.
Wembanyama?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll get to Wembanyama. Well, I could get to him right now. Wembanyama, and this is going to be a take that people don't follow or watch these games as closely are going to think is crazy, but he's overrated right now, and I'm going to tell you why. He obviously, and it's really part of we get to the state of the NBA. I'm going to talk about how they're really trying to build up this next wave of superstars. Now, Wembanyama is great, right? Is he an MVP candidate? Absolutely not. Is he a defensive player of the year? Absolutely not.
Really?
The
He leads the
game,
league in blocks.
right. And that's all people care about. And that's why he probably will win it, because he's going to lead the league in blocks. I was at the game, and going into the game, I already like kind of had this sense like, what's the deal with Wembanyama, man? Like, what? Watched a lot of his games and everything. I mean, Wembanyama, like, was he 7'6", 7'7", right? Offensively, he takes as many 3-pointers, actually a little bit more than Dame Lillard does. He takes over
Really?
9 3-pointers a game, only shoots 30%. Everybody loves, and they'll show him making threes in the highlights, right? Shoots 30%, never goes down low, never posts up, right? He will dive to the basket, and the guy should be averaging about 18 boards a game, because I mean, even when he dives in late to the basket, he's hands over everybody else, can easily grab rebounds, right? But defensively, he is slow. He is weak. He'll get stronger. He makes up for his defensive weaknesses by being 7'7", and he can come behind and block shots. He'll always average 5 or 6 block shots a game. The NBA gives out the defensive player of the year. I mean, they have to be fairly high in block shots. I mean, think about it. Lopez, I think, finished second or third in the defensive player of the year, because he was like a few years, it was 2 years ago, and was all defensive team. I don't think anybody that watches the Bucks games will consider Brook Lopez a defensive stopper.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And think about Gobert for a second. Yeah, perennial defensive player of the year guy, because he's always leading or second in block shots. During the Olympics, Gobert wasn't even on the court in the fourth quarter of those games, simply because his defense isn't that great. Yeah, he can block shots, and of course they had Wembanyama on the team too. But the way that they go through this, it should be about holding the opponent under a certain percentage when they guard them, and then how they defend the paint. And in that game again, Wemby and Giannis matched up against Wemby, shut him down. Go back and look at the stats of that game. And then defensively, they didn't bother putting Wemby on.
Are you talking about the game the Spurs beat the Bucks?
Giannis just that he had him on, just kind of plowed over him and dunked him. And again, this isn't all about Wembanyama is awesome, and he's going to be a future. He's got to put on some weight, and he's got to definitely, they have to start moving him inside and under the basket on the offensive end. If they do that and get him to stop jacking threes, I think that he can get to the point where he's the best player in the NBA.
Sure. Well, let me throw it over to the King. Let's get to the state of the NBA. I know Serge is a much bigger NBA fan than yourself, so I want to hear it from you, because that's one of the issues the NBA has been talking about is a huge decline in ratings. So to you, King, who I would call more of an NBA casual, I'd call myself that too. What's the state of the NBA to you? And then I want to hear the Surge on the state of
I
NBA
will.
too.
I'll tell you this, Matt, and I was talking with Serge earlier. I think the regular season stinks. It stinks. I can go to games down at, up in the suite with the company tickets. Sometimes they're available. They're available a lot more than you would think. But the last 3 or 4 games I've been to, they've been terrible. And as I was talking with Serge earlier, I've gone to a couple of those over the last 4 years, I think twice. The college basketball, when they had the sectionals or whatever they call them, the regionals, and that was awesome. The atmosphere and everything. Nobody watches the Bucks games when they're there. I mean, I just they're terrible. But yet I love the playoffs. It's playoff intensity, and I like it. Even the blowouts I can watch sometimes, but it is a bad product, and something's got to be done because I won't watch it. I'm not even a casual fan because of it. I
Sure.
just can't tune into games, and
Yeah.
the highlights are just dunking, and I don't know what needs to be done. I'm going to leave this to Serge because he loves the league. Postseason I do watch and watch a lot more than I thought I would. I like it, but that they need to do something, and that the commissioner, I don't know what it is. I don't know what the solution is.
Yeah. So Serge, what do you think the state of the NBA is, and what could they do to kind of maybe fix this ratings issue here?
Yeah, so I agree with the King here, which is, again, mark this time in the podcast that I'm in agreement with the King that
We're in trouble.
on a few things. Yeah, I mean, overall the viewership is down, and the popularity is down. I totally agree, and I said this a few years ago that it is really turning into kind of a 3-point shooting contest in the
Yeah.
NBA, and I'll throw some stats at you in a little bit. And then the other thing is the NBA is driving right now to expand internationally, expand the game internationally, right?
Right.
So they're trying to go about this in a couple different ways. They're trying to address things in a couple different ways. That to me really isn't the core issue. So what they're looking to do is first and foremost, and they've tried doing this, is get the star players to make certain that they're playing in every game and that there's the effort there in every game. And they've done this like a few years ago because players are missing games, and it's especially damaging, when, West Coast teams say comes to Milwaukee to play, they only come once a year and, their star player doesn't play. I mean,
Yep.
your own LeBron James, the last 7 years coming to Milwaukee has only played once.
Wow.
I actually saw
I will tell you this, he's afraid to play against Giannis.
No, he's
And
not.
I mean, again, you made since the All-Star game,
He's not
Giannis
scared.
embarrassed him. He does not come. And Embiid, I mean, a different Embiid has Philly and Denver games has never played in Denver. And so there's these situations that, and then obviously, they just want to rest their players. They don't really care, when it is. But if it's in a situation where the team's only coming there once, obviously that's going to hurt. By the way, I've made money off of being able to sell those Laker tickets every year because I know LeBron's not going to come anyway, but yet people are like, oh, I got to go see LeBron. And so it's one chance a Bucks season ticket holder can make some money. So if there's any out there, do that. But getting back.
But now you can see Luka.
Yeah. Getting back at, I mean, that's the thing is, the Dallas game, I was kind of looking forward to seeing Kyrie, so that doesn't really bother me. But anyways, the problem is, and what they're trying to do, they tried this a few years ago to implement this thing where they could penalize a team if they don't think that the player is truly injured.
Right.
They kind of gave up on that, right? Now they're looking at shortening the game maybe to 10-minute quarters, which, again, matches up to the international rules, maybe save some, minutes of a start. That's ridiculous. That's stupid.
Yeah.
And the real problem though is the schedule itself and
Absolutely.
the way that they have to. And I'm going to give you this perfect example, and it was a great thing that the Bucks did here recently. So they went on a 4-game road trip all around Texas, and the Houston they played, and San Antonio they played. Came back after the road trip, played on a Sunday against at home against Memphis. The very next night, had to travel back to Oklahoma City and play Oklahoma City. So it's a ridiculous scheduling thing. I mean, they're obviously just out there. They came back to play Memphis, and then they're going back out there. So in response to that, the Bucks did not play their entire starting lineup in Oklahoma City. So they rested everybody for that game, and that's really where you said. So imagine you're an Oklahoma City fan. Hey, I want to see Giannis. I want to see Dame. Right. Only chance, not only that, but if there's any Brook Lopez fans out there, they didn't even get to see him.
Yeah. Hey, King.
But that's really what it is. So they could definitely, look to maybe change that. The length of games really isn't the issue. And then, one more thing before I'll just go back to the King, and then I'll finish up. But I want to talk about the 3-point shooting. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, King, I was just going to ask you, what do you think about Adam Silver's idea? He wants to shorten the quarters from 12 minutes to 10 minutes.
Although, I'm for anything and try anything, but I will tell you the God forbid they shorten the season, make it 60 games. My God, I mean, it's like
that's
I would have these games mean something. First of all, mean more than they do now. Not just getting the playoffs. And that for one. And I know the owners aren't going to do that. They would fight that tooth and nail. But they're getting hit with reality, and that may come to be. But shortening, I don't know about shortening again. I'm not saying that's terrible. I'm just trying. You said that's the Olympic standard.
That's the international. So it's everywhere else. It's either 20-minute halves or 10-minute quarters. So he kind of brought it up in well, hey, if we want to go internationally, we want to make sure we have all the same rules, and since NBA is the only one that does it this way,
I wouldn't throw that out. I wouldn't throw that out. And it's less wear and tear. I don't see it as but I draw the line at the metric system. We're not using meters and but
yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't throw that idea out. That can only help, I would think. But the shortening of the season would be the sensible one to me. That'd be the one that they'd fight the most against.
Yeah. I mean, and that's absolutely would be the best thing to do. Another thing as far as giving the opportunity for fans to be able to maybe see more players is, instead of having the schedule East-West conference, maybe just bring everybody together, have some
I like that.
Have some opportunities where you may have a West Coast team come into your arena more than once, right? And then you can start talking about, hey, your star guy has to play in one of those games or whatever.
I like no conferences. Just have every game
we have. I think the Wizards are coming here 3 times this year. I'm really psyched for those 3 Wizard games. But that's the thing. I mean, and that sort of thing. And they already talk about hey, sometimes there's one conference is way stronger than the other. I mean, they're talking about how the Western Conference has more great teams, things like that. So that would get rid of that too. But one of the things I brought up again a few years ago that I knew was going to become a bigger issue. I didn't know it was going to be this, but one of the things to me that is, and again, an old school guy, I guess, it makes things unwatchable, is that the amount of 3-point shots that are going up.
You think Steph Curry ruined the game?
No, he
I don't think really.
Guys.
I mean, Steph Curry is one of it's just that the mindset of I don't know. King might remember this. Remember Earl Weaver of the Orioles? We always talk about 3-run homers, and I'd rather have three. And you know what? You ended up seeing that. Like if you look at and I know we're not talking about baseball, but that ended up killing things like batting averages and increased strikeouts. I mean, look, think about King when we were kids, younger. There was 300 was kind of like, hey, hitters hitting 300, and above, those were the good hitters, right? And that was kind of the Mendoza line, and there was always about 20, 25 guys that were hitting over 300. I think there was only 3 or 4 that hit over 300 this past year. And now if they hit maybe 280, 275, they're considered a good hitter. So that's the whole swing for the fences. But again, I compare it to that.
No, it's a really good analogy, Chris, about how the game has changed that way and how it's looked at. Two things, Matt, you said about Steph Curry. Dylan Watsko will be on for college basketball, but he talked about as a child how Steph Curry changed how he loved the game and drew him to the game. And I love watching him. But I will tell you too, something's got to be done. Do you enlarge the court? Do you? I want to ask you, Chris,
shot.
Have you heard, Chris, of any fixes to this?
At a 4-point line.
Yeah, let me throw some stats in. I already mentioned like how Wembyana in a lot of these big, I mean, he's throwing up 9 threes a game, but like, the 3-point percentage, and this shows like basically how, the 3-point shot is really kind of determining games. The top, 5 or 6 3-point shooting teams are all currently, playoff type teams.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
9 of the bottom 10 3-point shooting teams are lottery teams. If you look at any box score, like after the fact, particularly, and I'm going to talk about Celtics, who really kind of raised the bar on this the last couple of years. If you look at the team that won the 3-point battle, they usually won the game. Now, that's not always the case, but certain teams aren't necessarily made up like that. Oklahoma City comes to mind as a team that is a middling, 3-point shooting team, but, they have a lot of other things going on in there. They got the size, they got the athleticism. Same thing with Houston. Those two teams are definitely outliers. But if you take a look at that, and I was just looking at like the box scores from last night. And first of all, do you know that the average 3-point attempts, field goal attempts, is on average up to about 40 per team per game?
Wow.
3-pointers?
I did not know that.
And teams usually only take about 85, 90 shots a game. So almost half the shots are 3-point shots. If you go back and look about 5 years ago, it was about 18 or 19 a game. So that is the explosion. Boston took last night against the Spurs 55 3-point shots out of 90.
Wow.
Now they hit 32%, which is not usually good enough unless you're the Spurs, who they played, who made 23% of their threes. And so Boston ended up winning by 10. Boston went on a losing streak this year, where they lost, I think, 4 or 5 games in a row, where they, in each of those games, they missed 23-point shots. That's more than the teams were averaging, like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So it's a big thing. If you look at the Bucs season, easy, right? Terrible 3-point shooting early on, tough schedule, or miserable. And then guys like Gary Trent got hot, and AJ Green got hot, Prince got hot, Portis got hot. All those guys, some of them are now top 10 3-point shooting. The Bucs, by the way, I think are the second or third best 3-point shooting team in the NBA, which is something that
I didn't know
should
that.
help them, as long as you got a guy like Giannis on the team too. If they got a little bit worse because of Kuzma Middleton trade, but overall, I think that is a big indicator. Does it play as much of a role in the playoffs? Maybe not. Again, things tend to tighten up. There's a lot more half-court offense, things like that. If a team that shoots a lot of threes isn't getting a lot of turnovers, which again, Boston does the best. They got the two best defensive guards, right, in the East. But that is such a huge factor. That to me makes things pretty unwatchable. Luckily, I get to go see Giannis, who after 12 years still, I'll go to a game and does something I've never seen before. But yeah, if you want to sit down and watch a game, pull up threes, pull up threes.
Absolutely.
Pull up threes.
All right, well, let's
Lakers,
move
by
on.
the way, when LeBron had to have Russell Westbrook come in, which was probably the dumbest move I've ever seen. But all right.
Westbrook was one of my favorite players. I was happy about that trade just because I was a Westbrook fan. I think it didn't work because he shouldn't have been taking threes. He should have just been, the point guard. Shooting was never his strength, and they were asking him to do something that he was never really that good at to begin with. But I wanted to move on from the state of the NBA. Let's get into some of the NBA news. We had a flurry of trades in this past, past 2 weeks. So let's start with the big one. I'm obviously very excited as a Lakers fan. We added Luka Doncic. But Serge, what are the Dallas Mavericks doing? Why would you trade away the cornerstone of your franchise who just got you to the finals a year prior?
So with this one, I will say that a lot of people always like, oh my God, they just look at the stat, they just look at the player's name, things like that. They do not know what happens behind closed doors, right? And to me, this was a situation where they obviously were going to have to pay him the super max in the summer. That there was an issue with Luka, behind the scenes, where they didn't think that he was complying to the physical, the fitness regime that they had laid out to him. He completely ignored that. We know that. And if you look at the finals last year closely and look at some of those games, I mean, he was a turnstile on defense. He's just not a defensive player. And too many people look at the stats and everything like that. I think Luka is an absolute awesome player, offensively for certain. But he is a liability defensively. And he was a guy that, effort wise, and, I mean, I really don't care about the getting in shape thing, obviously. But because if he's going to put up those numbers, like, we don't care. But defensively, I don't think he was doing his part, and could really hurt them defensively, and they just didn't trust giving him the money. Now, Dallas should have gotten more for him, because I know that they were willing to, obviously part with Connect and maybe another draft pick. They have lots of draft picks, so they probably could have got a more for him. But like when the trade happened, for now, Dallas's team was set up way better for this year. Davis fit perfectly, for Dallas, and unfortunately he got injured. So in the first game, but in that first game, what did he have? Like through 3 quarters, like 27 points, 18 rebounds, something like that. And is a great player, obviously, for the future. And the Lakers protecting themselves as kind of LeBron winds down. They got another guy they can build around in the face of the franchise. A team that I assume they're going to pay him everything he wants at the end of the year. So that's kind of how I see that this year. Now that that other trade got rescinded with Mark Williams going back, he did pass his physical because he's a great young player. And getting him, I thought, it's not a bad looking.
That was actually going to be my very next question. What and I actually wanted to ask the King first. Do you buy the whole media narrative that it was about the Luka trade, that it was about the conditioning, about how he didn't want to sign the Supermax, or do you think there's a greater conspiracy going on there with that Luka trade, King?
I will tell you that I don't know enough to give you a definitive answer. Here's what I think. Everything I've read and listened to, there was a link between the two general managers that played a lot into it. But what Serge mentioned earlier, he was, I can't say this for sure, but it was intimated in the articles that he was becoming a cancer, not necessarily where players came out, but where coaches and general managers were seeing him as a bad example, not what they wanted. And then the payday he had coming. And Serge said it, didn't trust him to get this 370 million they were guarantee, whatever it was. And that's all I can think, but I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah. And I mean,
I,
giving these guys these absolute supermax contracts, and the way that the salary cap and everything is set up now in the NBA, I mean, that really hamstrings your team. I mean, like, we saw again, we got two guys making 50 million, and we couldn't do anything, right? I mean, so you got to fit all these pieces in and everything. So but yeah, I think that one thing that was earlier in the year was Jason Kidd, did call out Luka for whining and everything, and he's become like the biggest whiner complainer where he's doing that, hurting the team because he's either not getting back on defense, getting technical fouls, aggravating the refs, things like that. But again, I mean, since then, Kidd, has kind of said nice things. I think everybody's saying nice things over there. They're not gonna like bury Luka or anything. So it kind of puts them in a tough spot. And then Davis getting hurt in the first game, I'm sure really kind of hurt the public opinion of that trade in Dallas. So
well, we knew he was going to get hurt. That was inevitable. But speaking of Anthony Davis, I was beside myself. I was very upset when the Mark Williams trade got rescinded. That was going to be the Lakers' missing piece. He was going to be our starting big man. So as a Lakers fan, I hope you say yes to this question. But Serge, do you think the Lakers can contend without really an established center? I think we're starting Jackson Hayes probably.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to Dan Kirk, not in a 7-game series, no way. The one good thing though that they have is in the West is right now the top teams, Oklahoma City, Houston, Memphis, these aren't like playoff tested teams or rosters, right? So they're definitely the better teams, more complete teams. Unfortunately, even with those teams, they're big teams too. Even throw in Denver. I mean, and so that's going to be tough matchups for Lakers right there. I don't think they can contend in a 7-game series. No, I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, enough on my Lakers. Serge, what do you think was the most impactful trade other than, of course, the Luka Doncic trade? I would argue that Luka trade kind of was the domino effect for all those other trades. So to you, what was the most impactful trade other than that Doncic one?
I think, a couple sneaky good trades were Cleveland getting DeAndre Hunter.
Absolutely.
Atlanta. I mean, Cleveland's going to be tough to beat, in my opinion.
Give me more on Hunter. What's Hunter's game?
DeAndre Hunter. Oh, I mean, he's where was he? Was he from Virginia? He was one of those defensive guys that came out.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's been, I mean, good 3-point shooter as a starter for Atlanta. Was hurt earlier this year, but has been playing great. A defensive guy that also can hit the three, kind of a 3-and-D guy.
Always helps in the playoffs with the D, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's just another one of those guys I think is going to be a great fit for that team. I mean, Cleveland, by the way, is number 1 3-point shooting team in the NBA. And you throw in Mobley, Jared Allen, and Hunter underneath, and they got 2 all-star guards.
They're just a complete team.
Yeah, that's a tough team right there. And Donovan Mitchell's a good playoff player. So that one I thought was good. I mean, I think a good value trade was Toronto getting Ingram. Which only because they just gave up a bunch of guys I think that are probably going to get bought out. I thought that my only conspiracy thing here is the trade with Fox going to San Antonio, Levine going to the Kings. The Bulls really got nothing for Levine, and I think that my contention is the Bulls are setting themselves up to go after Giannis. And
Oh,
again, whether or not, that's some kind of a trade with, all the draft picks that they've done, or like waiting until, 2 more years and, getting their roster ready just to bring him in. I mean, I think that with Giannis, I mean, he's definitely, made comments here and there. And whenever he makes a comment, the Bucks strike into action and do something just to try to appease them, whether it's good or bad. But that's going to destroy, the
Wow.
Bucks. The Bucks are losing a lot of money
yeah.
operationally right now.
Yeah, I really
Off
like
what?
that. I really like that.
They're losing a lot of money operationally right now, and they are. I mean, as a season ticket holder, you could see year after year, any of the perks, any of the little things that, they might throw at you. All of that's been getting kind of cut down. I went to the Marquette game actually, and I don't know if I should be talking about this on the thing, but you got 100 subscribers, so maybe nobody from the Bucks will hear
37
this.
maybe.
But yeah, but my Bucks was part of my Bucks ticket rep, trying to get me to sign up for next year. So hey, come down, to the Marquette game. We'll put you in the suite. We'll talk to you, corner you for a while. And it's the prices of the tickets continue to go up. There's not a lot of value there. I think, and I brought up, resale value is non-existent. I mean, even the Spurs game I went to where you got Wembyana coming to town. I mean, my tickets are, around 135 face value, and you could go out and probably buy one for $50,
Yeah.
on game day,
Wow.
and that's
Didn't
really
realize
across the
that.
board.
Huh.
So you don't. I mean, so if you can't make a game, it's out there that the value of the game getting back to, I mean, I love just going to watch Giannis play. So I mean, that's and I'm not a big, oh my God, so and so's coming to town, but there are a few guys I like to watch. But you throw all that in, you throw in the high prices. In my opinion, some of the again, there's no perks, there's no some poorly run operations. I just in-game entertainment's gone, like all of that stuff is gone. And so again, I think that they are hanging on to Giannis because that's the only thing that's kind of holding this thing together. I mean, if he leaves, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, because if people are not re-signing now for season tickets, and I haven't decided yet, or if people aren't going to the games, unless they can get in for $30 or $20, I mean, if they have a bottom dwelling team and are rebuilding, that's
That's a tough sell.
that's
Wow,
a
I
very
had no
tough
idea
sell.
that was what was going on. Wow, that's tough news. I
Yeah.
had no idea.
So back to some of the trades. King, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors have any championships left in the tank after they added Jimmy Butler before the trade deadline?
No, I don't think they're in that category.
Yeah, I don't think so
I think
either.
they got a better shot than the Bucks, but I don't think they're
You think
in that.
Golden State's got a better shot than the Bucks?
No, but I would, and I want this before we get off the podcast. I want each person's prediction. I only from what I see, I only think there are 2, maybe 3 teams that could win it, and I think they're all in the East.
That's a perfect segue to my next question. Would you guys like to do a new segment presented by no one?
Yes, jump on
All
it.
right. This segment, and I might be stealing it, so we can revamp it at some point if we need to. But this segment's called the King's Court. So what I want you to do here, King, is I want you to give me your NBA Finals winner. Tell me who you think's winning. I don't care who they're playing. Just give me the winner. And then Serge, I want you to critique his pick, and then I'll give you my pick after. I know you wanted that. But let's start with King. Who's your NBA Finals winner?
Coming off and we did it about this point in the NFL season. I correctly picked Philly and KC, although I didn't pick a winner. You didn't ask me to, but I think for sure that Boston is there again. And I think it's either them or Cleveland or the Knicks. And I even am throwing out OKC, the West team. And I liked what Serge said about their 3-point shooting. and they have what seems like the most talent. They probably will get there in the West, but I see any of those three teams. The Knicks, maybe not, but
You got to give me one winner. Give me one. You can't give me
okay,
four teams. Give me one team.
I'm taking Boston. If
All right.
Boston is going to play, and I think they are better than Cleveland in a 7-game series. I know.
Yeah.
I think I know where Serge is going, but I would stay with Boston. I think they're tested, and they'll come when the playoffs come around. They'll be a different team, and they've got guys that have gotten over the hump now, and
Yep.
they'll play with like this is icing on the cake type mentality.
All right. Well, Serge, what do you think? Tell me why the King is right or wrong with his pick of the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, I think the King is wrong on Boston. I
Ooh.
think that if I was to handicap it, I would have them fourth.
Wow.
Best odds in coming out of the. I do think Cleveland, New York, and Milwaukee have a better shot. I saw something this morning where they had ESPN's analytics odds to come out of the East, and the Bucks weren't even listed on there. They had a top four. I think they had fourth. They had Indiana at like 3%, and they didn't even have the Bucks in there.
Wow.
The other big three, but I mean, I think
I'm on FanDuel. They got the Bucks at fourth best odds to win the conference at plus 1,400. They got the Knicks, Cavs, and Celtics above them.
Yeah, I mean that's what I mean. Like I said, I saw like Indiana. I think they maybe just looked at the top four seeds. The Bucks are currently fifth, but anyways, I think again a lot really depends on health in the NBA. Boston.
True.
I just think like if everybody being healthy, they shoot just a ton of threes. I think that if there's a couple games that they're cold, they have no shot. But again, on the flip side, if they hit a bunch of shots, they can do it. But consistency is Cleveland and New York. I mean, Cleveland to me has it all.
So who's your NBA Finals pick?
I would say Cleveland for sure. I think in the West, I think there's going to be somebody kind of out of the blue. Right now OKC's the best team.
Lake Show out of the blue, out of the purple.
They're a team that's out of the blue. I mean, I wish if they had that center.
I
Can Denver play with any of these teams, Serge?
Huh?
Does Denver have any kind of shot? I haven't watched them closely this year, but
yeah, I think a team with Jokic has a shot for sure. Yeah, and they've been there before. I mean, again, Oklahoma City is by far the best team to me. They haven't had Holmgren like almost all year, and they still are the number one. And they still are the number one seed.
I don't think he's very tough. He gets hurt a lot, King. He doesn't seem very tough at all.
I'm saying a tough player to have. He's
player.
A playoff type
right.
guy.
I know. I'm joking.
I know. He's out.
They got Hartenstein. And
the other one.
Shai Gilgeous, and they're Shai Gilgeous is just a great scorer, and probably they're going to give him the MVP this year. Sure. But I mean, I think it's open for some team. I'm just starting to think like the Clippers made some moves. I mean, if they were completely healthy. Who knows? They could do it. You mentioned again
Ben Simmons, biggest free agency acquisition.
As being, but like the reason I'm saying is because Memphis is again they're young. Houston's very young. Those are like the top seeds right now, and so just like Oklahoma City last year, they were the one seed. They got beat right away. Some of the experience, I think, there could be a team that pops up, whether it be, a Denver, Laker, Clipper, one of those teams.
Sure. Yeah. So the Kings got Boston. The Surge has the Cavaliers. I put $50 on the Denver Nuggets, 50-8 to win 850. So those are our picks. But yeah, we talked a lot of NBA. I do want to talk some football here. There was a game on Sunday. Wasn't much of a game. So my first question about the Super Bowl, since there wasn't much of a game to watch, is what did you all think about the halftime show? King, we'll start with you.
Mary and I watched it, and I didn't get any of the lyrics, so I don't. no much. Mary said it was colorful and kind of lively, but indifferent, I guess, would be the one word I'd use. I just don't
Sure.
know the music. I don't know what he was trying to say. So later on, I guess he had a statement within the music, but I didn't get it at the time. So, but that's just me. I don't, to
Yeah.
me, even the Super Bowls I've been to, the one I remember was Tom Petty. I caught a couple of songs.
Oh.
It doesn't mean much. I wish they'd just put a high school band on, get out of there.
No. Oh,
And,
come on.
you know,
Oh, come on.
I don't.
That
I'm
was
not
my
big on that
favorite.
stuff.
That was my favorite halftime show ever. Serge, what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's specific to what kind of music you're into and the genre and things like that. I mean, that's just going to make the biggest difference. I'm not going to get into the production or any of that stuff, but the one thing I'll say is, people immediately jumping on social media and like complaining about it or like, oh, this is where. I mean, to me, it's like, what I mean, what are you entitled to? It's free. I mean, you're watching it as you're watching the
Yeah.
Super Bowl. It's not like you had to pay anything for it, or like what.
That's
You
a
know,
good point. It is free entertainment. Yeah.
Yeah, like well, oh, that's it. Well, I mean, what? You're never gonna watch another half. It's not like you're doing pay-per-view or like, I want my
Yeah.
money back. I don't
Yeah.
get that. It
Yeah.
reminds me of that Louis C.K. bit about like entitlement and like where we
Oh.
are in this day
Yeah.
and age. And he had the bit about like, the guy on the plane sitting next to him and, he's on his laptop and they came on and said, oh, the internet's not going to be working or the rest of the flight is, oh, great. And he's having a big fit. And he's like,
You're
where are the
flying.
expectations? Yeah, you're magically in a chair flying across the country.
Yeah, I saw that.
And you're complaining. You used to take people like 3 months to go there, and half the party would die across along the way. But you can't access your laptop, so it's kind of like, well, I mean, why are why do we
No,
have
I
to
know.
tease you with this?
Yeah, no, I don't complain about it. It's just something I'd rather get something to eat during that time. I don't, I'm not, even when it's somebody who's, I have the recordings and, outside of Elvis coming on, I'm really not interested,
Sure. King, what did you think of the score bug? I thought it was the worst score bug I've ever seen in a
What is it?
the score bug. They changed like I don't know how to describe it. Like it's
The
like
fact I
just
don't know what it
score
is
of
probably tells you.
the score of the game, what Fox used, like the graphic to show the score,
I can't remember it, to be honest.
it was horrible. What, Serge, did you have any opinion on that? I thought it was so bad.
No, but I
No opinion.
have empathy towards you, and I hope it didn't ruin your overall experience.
It didn't, but just something to complain about. That's how boring this
I mean,
game
it could
was.
have been
to
as
me.
bad as King's picks on the game, and
No,
you
0 for
kept
3.
constantly
I will
looking
tell
at
you
your
this, though,
tickets
Matt.
for your 3-leg parlay.
0 for 3.
Even losing my 3 bets, I had no problem watching that game. I like seeing excellence and what Philly did. I mean, there were years of blowouts where the offensive lines would dominate, and you had that here, but more importantly, the defensive line dominated Kansas City. But seeing that with 4 guys rushing and what they did to make him human, I went to the best game I ever saw in my life, any sport, the Super Bowl, where the Giants did the same thing to Brady and they beat the living hell. And I was there with Mello, and I watched them beat the living hell out of him. We had end zone seats, and we constantly saw him, and he was thrashed. And that it led to the greatness of Brady in my mind. He drove them down to a go-ahead touchdown late, and had one of their guys, Harris or one of them, not dropped a tough catch, but an interception. That game was over, and then the helmet catch and the touchdown by Eli. But that game, it was beautiful to watch the GOAT get dominated. You put the right people in, and you do that. Pass rush is so huge, and you saw Mahomes like that. I did not expect that. I expected a tight game, and I did not see that. I thought Kansas City's defense played well too.
I agree.
And lastly,
with
the Packers were flattered by this game. The Packers played wonderfully defensively, although I think Hurts was a little more dinged up at that time. They stopped Barkley and they kept Philly in check. They got a lot of punts out of Philly. Their offense
Yeah.
just couldn't do anything, and now you see
Yeah.
why. A lot. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, King, speaking of Brady and Mahomes, do you think Mahomes will ever catch Brady? Think he'll ever catch up to him?
Tough to put together. That it's so hard to win the Super Bowl. I don't think so, but he could give it a shot. I mean, and I didn't mind seeing them try to three-peat. I mean, people that were saying they were sick of them, I didn't mind watching them try to do it. No, I think he has a shot, but I would rather doubt it. It's so hard.
Yeah.
And they've got decisions on with money and stuff, and Philly doesn't seem to have any decisions. They seem to have what a job they did on the front in the front office. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
That Bond, how they got him. Who
Yeah.
knew? Guy's all
For
pro.
sure. Yeah,
Oh,
for
anyway.
sure.
All right.
Well, yeah, Serge, next question is for you. Is Jalen Hurts elite? He's a Super Bowl MVP, but I feel like I don't know if he gets enough credit in the mainstream media.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, defining elite, I mean, is he, at a level of, I mean, just overall play of a Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow, Mahomes, that sort of thing. Maybe not, but he is a champion, and he led him there. I mean, like, the way I think of it is like Mahomes. If you just watched Mahomes, and then people that are like, say, fantasy football people, and they're looking at just stats and things like that. I mean, if you just looked at that, you would never consider necessarily Mahomes being at certain levels.
Right.
But the fact that he just wins these games and is a great leader and everything. This was a huge game, I think, for Hurts, sort of to dispel, I guess, because he had that big season and everything and took him to the Super Bowl and actually outplayed Mahomes and that last, and then like had such a drop off and he's been kind of injured. And, this year they relied mostly on Barkley but I mean, you can't deny, man. I mean, it's not like he was missing passes or anything like that. He was making great decisions. Speaking of props, he killed one of my bigger prop parlays in the fact that he was the leading rusher in the game at the Super Bowl, actually beating out Barkley. I mean, he's a Super Bowl winner, man. There's a lot of guys quarterbacks that have won Super Bowls that definitely are lesser, I guess, than him. I mean, Manning couldn't even get in Eli couldn't even get in the Hall of Fame, and he won too. He beat Brady twice.
Oh, he'll be in there. He'll make
He
it.
will be in there. He
eventually.
deserves to be in there. His body of work in those two playoff runs were phenomenal. He was phenomenal against the Packers. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
King, what do you think?
And
Jalen
I
Hurts
thought he was a
elite?
lot, like, again, I didn't know, like, I didn't have his stats and everything like in the back of my head, and I like brought this up. I'm like, how did he just not get in? And they're like,
His
one year he
stats
had
are
like
terrible,
28
but
interceptions, and I mean, like, they started reading off all these stats about like how horrible he was in the regular season.
those stats should be out the window because, or a lot of them, or at least taken with a grain of salt, because he played in Giant Stadium, which any football player has said is the worst place to throw. The winds are the worst of any place, even the old Candlestick Park. Nothing is like that. He played with terrible teams at times. He, when it counted most, was absolutely tremendous, and that means a lot to win 2 Super Bowls and to beat Brady with
That's the
an
big
18-0
thing.
team and then beat him again. He did it, and that guy belongs in there. And
I agree. I was surprised.
I am so adamant about that. He was tremendous, and I watched all those games. A lot of them they were underdogs in. Going into Green Bay twice and whipping us once, and the other one where he played, and the kicker is the only thing that kept Green Bay in the game. They had a guy missed a couple of field goals. But so anyway, but to get off that, back to Hurts.
Yeah.
I think they played, if you saw that game, like they were putting all these guys, Kansas City, up at the line of scrimmage. And only a couple of times they asked him to throw deep. And one of them was a wiped out pass interference early on. And then the other was a perfect throw deep. He was tremendous. And if you remember the Washington game, he had a 4th and 5.
Yeah,
I think it was the
on the
ground.
Yeah.
That was a perfect pass. I mean, game changing. He was great. and he ran when he had to and got down. I mean, that guy is good.
But is he elite? Is he elite?
I put him number 5. Chris named the
Okay.
top 4.
All
Burrow,
right.
Mahomes, Jackson, and Allen. And
All
I
right.
put him 5 and rising. I mean,
Sure.
that whole playoff run, it seems like they played with one hand tied behind the back. They did not use the receivers a lot. And I
Yeah.
kept wondering about that in the Packer game. I thought it was because he was hurt. He didn't run a lot either. And they just kept it. I think they knew what they had in their defense and let that be the star. They played it right. I mean,
Yeah.
that team was good. I mean,
Yep.
really good.
Yeah, well, so I only really got 2 questions left. But last question for you, King. Do you think Travis Kelce will retire? Do you think he should retire? Where do you see that? How do you see that unfolding?
Yeah, I could care less. None of it bothers
don't
me when
care?
they show Taylor Swift or anything. None of that. I don't care. You know,
No, I know. I didn't bring up
he's
Taylor
been a
Swift.
great pro. They've used him, and Andy Reid, like Belichick used to use Gronk. They used him as a weapon and other stuff off him. I mean, these kind of guys are out there. You can get them in later rounds. You know, we have one that's pretty good, Tucker Kraft, and you get the right coach that can use these guys and the right quarterback, and they're just weapons. And yeah, it might be at the end of his run. I don't know. Whatever he wants to do, get married, you know, do this again, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't, you know.
He didn't get the storybook ending of proposing to Taylor with all the confetti raining down. Unfortunately,
Yeah, I saw that. There
That's-
was some bets
I
on
bet.
that. No,
Yeah, I bet people had
the
a
guy
lot
I
of
felt
money
bad
on
for
that.
was his brother retiring a year early when he got
Yeah.
the championship. Jason.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
tough.
He did.
That's a
He got
tough
a
one.
ring, but he should have got a second, you know, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, all right. So thanks again for joining me, y'all. I only really have one last question. This one's for Serge. So I know I have this podcast, but I'm trying to make it a part of a different thing. I'm trying to create a company called Goosebump Sports because I think the best part about sports are those moments that give you goosebumps, you know, whether it's a walk-off home run or a buzzer beater or Hail Mary or whatever it is. So Serge, I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite goosebump moment? Or if you can't pick a favorite, maybe name a few that come to mind, your all-time favorite sports moment.
Well, it's obvious. It's pretty easy. It's the NBA championship that I got to witness.
Yeah.
With the Bucks.
Tell me about that night, Chris. Things that you remember from that night.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fairly tight game. I get leading into this, by the way. We talked about resale of tickets and things like that. You know, this is game 6. We had a chance to clinch it at home, and the seats like around me and everything were going for about $5,000 a piece. And this is in a Milwaukee market, and you know, it's again 150 or something like that. I mean, I never again thought of it myself personally, but I mean, I'm certain that there's people out there that did. I just remember running into a lot of people that I've known throughout the years, like have been season ticket holders, across the way, and like, it was just great seeing that, no one like there's that much, invested into this, and they're that big of Bucks fans that it never even crossed their mind to make a buck and sell this. And again, there's no guarantee they were going to win this game and win a championship there too. So, but that was the first part, and then again it was a tight game, and it was a game though that, like I said, Giannis going into that fourth quarter, I've never seen a player dominate a game. He made every free throw. I mean, like, and again, people talk about his free throws. Was he 17 for 17 I think at one point? I mean, he took over the game, and I go back and watch that game from time to time, just because honestly, never. He's just basically said, we're not losing this game. We're not going back to Phoenix. And again, like it was tight up until probably about the last minute or so, when we knew we had it. Everyone celebrating and hugging, and obviously a lot of tears from some of us, longer standing season ticket holders. And then again, then the Bucks and the 5-Star Farm screwed up by not having any volume on any of the presentations where you could hear it. Yeah, it was, But a lot of great scenes, a lot of great pictures. Giannis crying on the bench and everything. So,
Yeah.
um,
I
yeah,
I remember
that's obviously my big moment.
Yeah, it's a great moment. I remember being in the Deer District for that game. I'm a Lakers fan, but I was wearing a Bucks Ray Allen jersey, and I don't know if it ever made it to air, but a news reporter and a camera, like we walked right past it, and they asked me, they're like, "What did you think about that game?" And I was like, "I'm a LeBron fan, but I'm pretty sure that was the greatest single game finals performance I've ever seen. That was just ridiculous for me, honest. What it was like, 50, 14 and 5 blocks or whatever. He
Yeah.
was sensational there.
Oh,
Sensational.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I got for you guys. Thanks so much for pulling up to the podcast. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Serge. Appreciate
Yeah,
having
appreciate
your
it.
insight. It was
Let me
really
know
good.
when you want to do it again. Good seeing you
Yeah,
again, Nick.
for sure. For sure. Good
Absolutely.
times
Maybe NBA playoffs after Boston gets to that final game. We'll come back on and
we'll see.
revisit.
We'll
Etch
see.
it in stone, my men. Etch it in
Okay.
stone.
Cavs Nuggets in the finals. That's what I'm envisioning.
What was yours,
here,
Serge?
King.
Serge,
I
what
had the
was yours?
Cavs. I don't know if I had the Cavs. I don't know if I necessarily finalized my West pick there, but I said it was going to be somebody sneaky.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see what happens. Well, thanks so much, guys. I'll let you know when it's up and running the podcast in probably a couple hours here. I got to go do some editing, but thanks again, guys. A lot of fun.
Thanks,
All right,
man.
thanks.
All right.
Yeah.
Take care, guys.
We'll see you guys later. Thank you so much to the King and to Chris Surges, the Surge. Really appreciate y'all coming on. It was nice to meet you, Chris. I assume I'm recording this before the interview, but I assume it was nice to meet you. But yeah, y'all, I'm sure we'll do it again sometime. So just wanted to express my gratitude. Thanks again, guys. Let's get to everyone's favorite moment of the week, the Goosebump moments of the week. We got a lot of good basketball moments. The Super Bowl was a dud, so no football. Let's start off at number 10. We got Grayson Allen hitting one at the horn to send the game to OT.
Will Hardy trying to get his defensive pieces set. O'Neal fires over the top. Grayson gets one away. Bucket! We're tied, 122!
Number 9, Miles Bridges hits the game-winning corner 3 for the Charlotte Hornets.
LaMelo's got it. Sohan in front of him. LaMelo. Corner 3! Yes! Good golly, Miss Molly! Miles Bridges has done it!
Number 8, Emiliano Grillo hits a hole-in-one at the Phoenix Open, and the crowd goes wild.
Oh, go ahead and just do that. A slam dunk.
Number 7, DeMar DeRozan wins it for the Kings on a clutch floater.
Baseline. Oh, he stepped through the double team and scored with 1.9. Kings lead by 1. Dallas needs a miracle. Dinwiddie throws it up, and the Kings win the game.
Number 6, Connor Brown scores the walk-off goal for the Oilers, assisted by McDavid.
With some wiggle down the seam, they score! What a setup! Brown wins it off the gorgeous delivery from Connor McDavid.
Number 5, Greedy Williams goes coast to coast at the buzzer in double OT.
Basket! He lays it in! It's good for UNCW! It counts! It's over! Coast to coast! Greedy Williams wins the game for the Seahawks! What a finish!
Number 4, Fat Hill wins the game on a posterization. What?
Be the hero. Fat Hill runs! Oh, yes!
Number 3, Lamar beats UTRVG on an insane play.
Put it up, and he makes it. Andrew Hollerfield on the putback. Oh, man. Oh, man. How did that happen? We got to look at the replay on this one, Dan. Off the backboard. Oh, that's good, Dan. That is a good shot.
Number 2, Darius Garland hits a logo 3 at the buzzer to beat the Pistons.
Left, Niang, no foul, Garland. Garland from midcourt. Wow!
Number 1 moment of the week, Deion Perry hits a 75-footer at the horn to win it for Fairfield.
70 for the win. It's good! Deion Perry wins it for the Stags.
I don't believe it, Robert. I don't believe it. What a shot. Deion Perry. Unreal, Robert.
He put it up from about 65 to 70 feet. Did he get it off in time? He did. Fairfield's going to win it. 59-56 on a bomb from three-quarter court.
What a shot from Deion Perry. Three-quarter court shot. I feel like I get a half-court shot every week, but that's a three-quarter court shot. Cold logo 3 from Garland. Fat Hill won the game on a dunk. I don't know how you could get better than winning a game on a dunk other than being named Fat Hill and posterizing the guy on a game-winning dunk. And I didn't expect to see golf in February, but that hole-in-one at the Phoenix Open was crazy. I loved when they just started throwing beer on the course and all of that. I guess that's the waste management. That's why they do that. But shout out my Auntie Julie, owner of this F-bomb jar. She was at the Phoenix Open with her wife Angela and some of my other family members. But let's get to the end of the show. We'll end it with a game of the week. Now they haven't really released a spread or a line to this game, so I'm gonna try to be flexible here, but I wanted to make the game of the week Purdue versus Wisconsin because that's a huge game for me personally. You got 2 ranked Big Ten teams. It has a lot of implications, but I got to give the game of the week to number 1 Auburn at number 2 Alabama. This is more of like an endorsement of the game than a preview. I can't even name you a single player on either team. Nope, Brandon Miller's, graduated, so I'll have to learn. This is about the time, the Super Bowl ended. This is when I get into college basketball, so I got to start naming names and learning them, but let me just pick this Auburn-Alabama game anyways. My pick is going to be Auburn minus X points. However many points they're favored by them, take them. I like Auburn to win, not big in this game, but handedly, comfortably. I think they win by 6 or 7. I wouldn't imagine the spread would be any more than that. It'll probably be, a couple points, 2 or 3. We'll see. But yeah, I'm only really picking Auburn here because I hate Alabama. I hate their Alabama football, and my hate extends towards their basketball team as well. I know Auburn's kind of a chalk pick here, even on the road. But yeah, give me Auburn. I guess all I can really say is war, damn, Eagle.